Hey there, it's Liz from No Trace. Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to show you how to sew a super cute zipper pouch using scraps of fabric. This project is awesome because you can use scraps as small as 1 inch wide, or 1 inch wide, or 2 inches wide, or even a little bit bigger than that. But you can really use up your small scraps, and the finished project is really nice. I sewed this up using my own kind of quilt as you go technique, and it's really easy for the total beginner to do, so let's go. In order to make your scrappy zippered pouch, you're gonna need lots of scraps of fabric. So these are long, thin strips that are anywhere from about 1 inch to 2 inches wide, and I have a whole bunch of these that I'm gonna piece together as I sew. And I also need 2 pieces of liner fabric that are 7 inches tall and 10 inches wide. You could create your liner pieces out of scraps of fabric too, but they won't really be seen as much, so I tend to save the effort for the outer pieces that are actually going to be seen. And then you need 2 pieces of cotton batting to attach all of your scraps to. And I like to use organic cotton batting. All of the fabric that I purchase new is organic, but it just makes a really nice texture when you're all done with your pouch. And the zipper that I have is a 9-inch metal zipper that's 100% cotton, but you should use up whatever zippers you have in your stash and shorten them down to 9 inches if you have a longer one. In order to assemble our pouch, we need to first create the outer panels. So what I'm going to be doing in this next step is attaching strips of fabric onto my cotton batting one at a time, and then I'm also going to be adding some quilting stitches on top. So let's get started. So the way I connect the strips to the batting is start with 1 piece over on the far right edge, and I'm just going to start doing stitches right on top of this strip in order to create that quilted look. And I'm bumping my stitches up to 5 millimeters, so they're going to be really wide. And I'm going to do a straight row of stitches every about 1/4 inch. So basically I'm using the edge of my presser foot as a guide, and as long as you start on the edge of your fabric, you don't need to do any kind of back stitch, and you're just going to stitch straight down. Here we go. Now I'm lining up the edge of my presser foot with the last row of stitches and just doing the next row. Okay, so I've got 2 rows of stitches. If I were to do a 3rd row, it would basically be on the very edge of the fabric. So it's time for my next piece. So I'm going to grab a strip. Let's grab this blue strip, and I'm gonna put, so this is a solid. If it had a right side and a wrong side, I would put the right side on top of the right side of my panel, and I'm lining up the raw edge of this new strip with the raw left edge of the old strip. And let me trim some of these threads. Okay, so that's tidied up a little bit. Now make sure that the top edge is lined up with the top edge and the raw edges are lined up with each other. And I'm going to stitch this down with about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And again, you don't really need to do a back stitch. And I'm going to keep my stitches at 5 millimeters. So that's really wide, but since these are again stitched with additional rows, I don't really worry about the fabric sort of coming apart on me. So once you've attached the new strip on top of your original strip, you're just going to do a finger press, a gentle finger press, sort of smooth it out, and then you're going to come on top of it and do another row of stitches, again with a 1/4 inch seam allowance from this new edge this new seam that we created there. So I have a knee bar on my machine that allows me to use my knee to lift my presser foot up and down. And if you sew a lot like I do, I would highly recommend getting one if you can swing it, because it's super handy when you're doing work like this. So we lift up the presser foot with our knee and we just go back down. And again, and come back down. So I'm lining up the edge of the presser foot with my last row of stitches. This is kind of a quilt as you go process. It's definitely far from perfect, but I think the end result is actually really beautiful. So I'm pretty happy with it. Okay, and once I see that my next line of stitches is basically going to get hidden with my next strip of fabric, that's when I stop and get my second strip of fabric. And I like to mix up the proportions. So, you know, here's a pretty thin piece, this is a pretty wide piece. Maybe I'll do another wide piece, but then maybe I'll add in a narrow piece after that. All right, so here's another 2-inch strip. So these are all 7 inches long, and the widths again are anywhere from 1 to 2 inches. This one's 2 inches wide. And I find that for my taste, I like to have a lot of neutral fabric mixed in with the more fun prints. Otherwise it feels a little bit busy to me, but you might find that you really like lots of fun and colorful pieces pieced together. Okay, so again, I'm putting the pretty sides facing each other, and I'm going to join them with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Once again, I'm just going to go straight down. And this isn't exactly a 1/4 inch, it might be more like 3/8 inch, but it's somewhere around a 1/4 inch. Okay, so now we press it once again just with our fingers. And again, we're going to use this line where the beige meets the navy as our edge, and we're going to use the edge of our presser foot and just sort of follow that to create another line of stitches. So now we're near the very edge of the batting, but we're not quite there. So I'm going to add one last strip to really cover up this last part, this selvage edge. I keep kind of hiding it under as I sew. You could cut your selvage edges off before you start sewing. I just left them in. It gives a little more body to the bag. So I'm going to add one more strip that's a little bit larger than I need, and just really cover up that end piece. I'm going to do a finger press and just do one last row of stitches on top. So I've finished attaching all of the strips onto the batting, and I put you always want to have a little bit more fabric than you need, than less fabric than you need. So I have a bit extra on this end, and you'll probably notice that as you do this sort of top stitch quilting that things can kind of stretch and move around a little bit. So after you've attached this, you want to cut your pieces, make sure that they're still 7 by 10. So I'm going to go ahead and line this up on the 6 line, which you can't quite see, and then come on over to 16, which is right here. And I've got my quilting ruler and a rotary cutter. These are super handy tools. I use a lot. I'm just going to straighten out that edge, and then I'll save this strip for a future project. And then make sure that you still have 7 inches in this direction. So I'm going to line this up on the 8 and just do a little bit of trimming at this line. And get that out of the way. And flip it over and do the same thing so that I know this side is also nice and straight. Now the key to getting a nice bag in the end is that all of your pieces are the right size. So if you ever find that as you're sewing you get like puckers or little wrinkles, the key is really make sure that your starting pieces are cut to the right size. So this is now 7 by 10, and I went ahead and I stitched the second panel with a bunch of strips, and this got a little bit uneven, stretched out a little bit, which is normal. So now I'm going to trim this piece down, and again I went a bit over with the fabric, so the fabric goes past the batting. And you always want to go beyond the batting rather than just short of the batting. So we're going to trim this down to 10 inches wide using our rotary cutter and ruler. And then make sure we have 7 inches tall. So go ahead and get a nice straight line on the other edges here. So the next step, we're going to be attaching our panels to our zipper. And the way you want to do that is to put the top side or the right side of the zipper face down on the top right edge of one of your outer panels. So these pieces are all kind of abstract and don't necessarily have a right or wrong edge, but I think I'm going to use this as my top edge, and I'm going to put my zipper face down right on the top edge and just center it there. So this is a 9-inch zipper, and I have about a 1/4 inch of zipper tape that kind of goes over the edge. And then get out some clips, and I always use binder clips because I try not to buy plastic products whenever I can, and I find that regular old office binder clips work just fine. So I'm attaching the outer panel to the zipper, and now we're going to take one of our inner pieces. Now again, you could have patchworked your inner pieces too, but I just cut this out of some sort of a large leftover piece of fabric. I don't know if I can call it a scrap because it was pretty good size. And then I'm just going to add this into a zipper, into my clips, I should say. Just like so. All right, and then I'm going to take this over to my machine and sew it with the zipper foot. All right, so I'm going to switch out my presser foot. I'm going to push on this Juki has a button on the back of the presser foot, so just push it and it releases your standard presser foot. Open up your console and find your zipper foot. Sometimes they look like this, sometimes they are just short little all metal feet. I have a FOF that has a short foot. I was saying before I dropped this that my FOF sewing machine has a really short foot. That's a zipper foot. All right, so we're just gonna pop this on. So we're lining up this bar underneath the presser foot sort of leg or arm, whatever you want to call it. Lower the arm and it clicks onto that bar, and then lift it up. Get our thread out of the way, and then we're going to stitch the zipper and fabric and outer panel all together with about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So just get that under the presser foot, and the width of my zipper presser foot is about 1/4 inch. So I'm going from this edge all the way down, little back stitch, and then just straight down, and pull those clips away before you get to them. And this guy, I have this cute little bag that I keep my clips in. Alrighty, and we are getting close to our zipper head. So what you want to do is keep your needle down, but lift your presser foot up, and then you want to push this head back. I'm going to pull my clip off. See if that helps. All right, and just push it all the way back out of the way so we can stitch this last part. And then we want to make sure that these 3 edges, liner fabric, zipper, and outer panel, are lined up with each other. And then we lower our presser foot and we keep sewing. And we're going to do a little back stitch. And come all the way off and cut those threads. All right, so now we need to press this seam that we just made at the iron. So I'm gonna go do that and be right back. Okay, so I just pressed this down and I pressed the back down, and I'm gonna do a top stitch. And I forgot to mention, you probably want to do a more narrow stitch when you're joining these pieces. And then I'm gonna do the same 5mm stitch width for this next row so that it kind of matches all of my other stitches. So we're just going to, I'm going to stitch this way just to get a good start before I come to that zipper pull. Okay, so we're going to get our fabric right under the presser foot, and we want our needle to be real close to this where this fabric meets the zipper tape. You don't really need to do a top stitch here, a back stitch, because this is more of this row of stitches is going to get caught up in our next round of sewing. So we're just going to start and go. So we've added a row of stitching there, and the purpose of that is to help keep this panel in place and this panel in place so that when you're opening your zipper, nothing is going to get caught in your zipper. No fabric is going to get caught. Everything is sort of locked down and out of the way. All right, so one side of outer panel and liner fabric is attached to our zipper tape, and now we're going to attach the other pieces, and we're just going to follow the exact same steps. So we want to put the panel right side down on top of our zipper's top side and clip it in place, and then add the lining to the clips. Again, the back of this looks really crazy and messy, but we don't really need to trim all these threads because they're going to be on the inside. No one's going to see them, and if we cut them, that increases the chance that one of these threads will get pulled through and come loose. So I actually just prefer to leave them kind of crazy like that. Okay, flip it over and add our lining. And if the lining had a right side, you want to be putting right side towards right side and the right side towards the back of the zipper. But this is just a solid, so there is no right or wrong, which is kind of great. That's one of the cool things about a solid. All right, so now that this is added in, we are going to do the same thing of stitching with a 1/4 inch seam allowance along this edge, then ironing, and then top stitching. So now that all of the panels are attached to the zipper, we want to take another moment to just even things out, because that's just going to make the last steps so much easier. So I've grabbed my ruler again, and I've got my rotary cutter, and I just want to even out this edge like that. Did I get it? Nope. Let's move the zipper tape, or the zipper pull, out of the way, and then just do a little even out here. Get this zipper pieces out of the way, and I save these. All my little scraps I save and then get repurposed as something else, like dog bed stuffing, or turn it into paper, or recycle it into yarn. So save your tiny scraps. You can also compost them if you use all natural fibers, which I do. Okay, I'm flipping it around, and I'm going to come over to this side, and I'm going to do another straightening out because I can tell that this isn't totally straight. And just go all the way down and get a nice straight edge. And then we are ready to join our bag together. So what you want to do is bring your outer pieces together, so pretty sides together, and your liner pieces together, pretty sides together. And again, these are solids, so all the sides are pretty, but we want to clip around these sides, but we're going to leave an opening, and the liner fabric that we don't stitch over, but we're going to sew all the way around the bag. Okay, and whenever I'm clipping a bag with a zipper, I want to always start at the zipper tape sides, and I want to make a point to line up those seams with each other, and then put a clip right there. I have the zipper tape pointing down into the lining fabric, and then just clip it. And now we're going to flip the bag over, and again we want to line up these seams, so where the fabric meets the zipper tape, we want to line that up. Make sure your zipper's straight, doesn't have any funniness in it, and make sure the tapes are pointing down into the liner fabric. And then put a clip right here. Okay, and then we're going to put clips on the other sides too. Now if you want to add any kind of tag or a little tab or a little loop. You want to get that in place in this step. So I'm going to add a little loop of fabric and a little tab on one side just to give it a little more personality, if you will. And I'm clipping the bottom. You can use pins, I just have my clips handy. So I'm clipping the bottom. I'm going to leave an opening of at least 3 or 4 inches and knot stitch here. Now let me get my tag and my loop to put on the side. All right, so I'm going to put a little loop of fabric. I like to make these little ribbons. I guess I call them ribbons or straps, little mini straps out of scraps of fabric using my bias tape maker. And I actually have a video on making zipper pulls with a bias tape maker. And these are created in the same way, but with a larger bias tape maker. Okay, so if you want to put a ribbon or some kind of loop in your bag, you're just going to slide it in on one side in between the outer layers of fabric. So fold it in half and just slide it in there near the top, but not right at the top. And then grab a clip and clip it in place. And then the same thing with your tag. Just get your tag if you have tags and fold it and slide it in right under the loop and put a clip on both of them. And now we're ready to sew. So we're going to stitch all the way around, but remember to leave an opening in the liner fabric so we can turn this right side out. So I'm going to leave about a 4-inch opening, and I'm going to use about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And remember to do a back stitch at the start and stop. As you get near the zipper, just make sure that you're sticking to your 1/2 inch seam allowance, and you can also feel for metal if you're using a metal zipper. So go ahead and feel for that and make sure you're not sewing on the metal. And I always slow down when I get near the zipper. Just go nice and slow. Perfect. Now this is where I have that little loop, so I'm going to actually reinforce the little loop by going over it with a back stitch and then over it again. Alright, so I've stitched all the way around, leaving an opening in the lining. I left it a little smaller than I wanted, but that's okay. So now we just turn the bag right side out through the hole in the lining and take your time. You could trim the corners off your bag if you wanted to. I'm just leaving them on. It'll give the bag a little bit more structure down on those corners. And I'm fine with that. Oh my goodness, it's so cute. Okay. This is where a chopstick comes in handy, or a pencil. And just get into those corners and push them out as much as you can. If you trimmed your corners, you'll get a crisper corner, but like I said, I'm just leaving them untrimmed and having a little more padding and bulk down in that corner. And then you'll want to push out the corners of your lining too. Okay, so it's almost done. How cute is that? The next step is to close up the hole in the lining, and you could take this to your iron and press that opening closed, but this opening has a pretty good crease, so I'm just going to take it to the machine and stitch it up. All right, I've stitched it closed. So the last steps are to trim off the loose threads from the lining fabric and tuck your lining into your main pouch and check for loose threads, of course, on your main pouch on the outer part. And I'm gonna push out that corner too. Check your zipper and you're done. So cute. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful, and I hope you get out there and do something fun with your fabric scraps. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It really helps my channel. It tells YouTube that I'm providing information that's helpful to other people. And also go ahead and subscribe to the No Trace channel to get notified about all of our new videos. We put out a new video every single week. So I'll see you again very soon.